It was the poorest city in Italy, in one of the poorest teams, like near the bottom of the table. They'd only ever won 2 Coppa Italias. Like, if you compared them to an English team, I would say maybe it would be kind of a Newcastle or I'm trying to think of like one city teams, but maybe like a team who's incredibly well supported, but not really won that much. And that's where Napoli was when he came, right? So it was such a huge statement for them to sign this player. Like I said, 3rd from bottom. Well, it all changes from there.
Yeah, and the thing that, I mean, unfortunately, it's still very widespread among ultras in Italy to make fun of Naples because of their cholera epidemic that the city suffered in 1973. And when we talk about Naples being a very poor place, so Napoli still is a pretty poor city compared to the rest of Italy. But in 1973, to make you understand how bad the situation was concerning also the hygiene in the city, running water and everything, there was a cholera outbreak in 1973. And so the Neapolitans, seeing Maradona, the best player in the world, sign for them, imagine what it means. It means somebody believes in us. Somebody, while we're being made fun of by all the supporters in Italy, we are struggling. We barely managed to get to the end of the month, but man, now on Sundays we can see Maradona.
I want to quickly say, being made fun of is a bit of a lightweight if you hear the words in the song. They're pretty extreme, and it's one of the things, again, in the documentary, was it wash them with fire and praying for Vesuvius to erupt. Like, I think it's quite vitriolic and pretty horrific to hear, but that happens in every country, right? I think, like, horrific football chants. But yeah, I think they saw that someone was there to try and make something at this team. Now, he says in the documentary he went there because nobody else wanted to buy him. He was too expensive. He'd had a big ankle injury. He was unpredictable, but that was all to Napoli's benefit, right? And he came in and he embodied that city. That the personality of that city is his personality. It is the working class, like, poor hero who's kind of working hard, and he's doing it for the people in the stands. And I don't think there's a club in Italy that would appreciate that more than the Napoli fans. So I feel like straight away it was a match made in heaven. And yeah, he turned their fortunes completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And he's then gone on to become a symbol of the city, to the point that of all the things that you can associate Napoli with, I mean, the beautiful architecture, the history, all the beautiful islands, the Gulf of Naples, the volcano, all the history that Napoli has. When I think about Napoli, I think about Maradona instantly. And I have never been to Napoli, and that's really a shame. I'm Italian. I have never been to Napoli, but I have seen so many pictures. Of course, the pictures that you took around Napoli of all the Maradona graffiti. It's insane.
Now, this is something. When I went to Naples, I went with 3 girls, I think, and we turned around. It was for a birthday. And straight away, I was like, okay, if we're in Naples, we've got to go and see the Diego Maradona artwork. And they all kind of looked at me like, the who? Sorry, like the what? And I literally dragged these. I was like, no, I'm not going to Napoli and not getting pictures. And we walked around. And honestly, it was the Quartiere Spagnoli, right? It's the Spanish Quarter, which is the kind of, again, I'm using the term a lot, but working class part of the city. And it's, by the end of it, they were genuinely looking out for it and thought, this is really cool. Like, I mean, it is beautiful. It's every street, every corner has some kind of mural of him or a picture of him. Yeah.
But why? Well, he won them their very first league title, their very first Serie A in their history, which was huge for a city like Naples to beat the competition of teams such as like Juventus, AC Milan, Inter. That was huge. It was also a geographical revenge of southern Italy against northern Italy. So the part of Italy that has historically been struggling ever since Italy became a country, as late as 1861, there has been a super huge divide between the north and south. I feel like Napoli winning the league was a first statement of don't ever count us out. We are part of this country, and now we are the best team too.
Exactly, that's it. That's them putting their marker down and going, don't you forget about us. Don't you ever forget about us. And I think in the documentary it said there was 2 months of celebration after they won the Scudetto. And my favourite thing is the banner. I can't remember in Italian. I'm sure you'll be able to translate it. But the banner outside the cemetery, someone just left a banner that said, "You don't know what you missed." And it is just, I saw that and honestly I got emotional. I was like, this is amazing. This is amazing.
Man, it's beautiful. Yeah. And it's not the first time that I hear of like celebrations brought to the cemetery to celebrate something. I don't want to get off topic, but there is a very famous Italian comedian who's a hardcore, his name is Paolo Rossi, just like the football player. He's a hardcore Inter supporter. And when Inter won the Champions League after 45 years, he said, I felt very ashamed because I had this thing in my head that my mom had told me, if Inter win the Champions League, please bring me something to the cemetery to let me know that that's happened. And he said that he felt a bit like an idiot walking into the cemetery the next morning. He hadn't slept with an Inter scarf. And then he walked into the cemetery and he sees a parade of Inter flags and everything. So yeah, going back to Maradona, seeing that banner outside of the cemetery, guys, you have no idea what you've just missed.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I love that somebody had that made. I love that somebody thought about it. I love everything about it.
And also, it's very fitting because Neapolitans are known to be very superstitious people, and the fact that somebody was like, we gotta notify the dead of what we've just done, I was like, that's great. But that wasn't enough. He didn't win one title with Napoli, he won two, and he won them also a UEFA Cup in 1988, 1989.
Now, this is when the UEFA Cup, we forget, because now the Europa League is such a joke, we forget that the UEFA Cup was a major competition. This was like difficult to win. If you go through the past winners of that competition, they're big teams, and this was a massive achievement for them because obviously qualification was much harder. Like the European Cup was just the winners and the champions of each league. So the UEFA Cup, I think, was the cup winners or second place. I can't remember how it qualified, but the caliber was much higher. So for them to win that competition was incredible.
And once again, when we talk about a player who wasn't defined by stats, so the final was played over 2 legs. It was Napoli against German side Stuttgart. They played the 2 legs. They won the first one 2-1 in Naples, and they tied the second one 3-3 in Stuttgart. Who were the goal scorers for Napoli? Well, Maradona just scored a penalty in the first leg of the final, and then it was Careca, Alemão, Ferrara, and Careca. So you see, he was the beacon of the team, but he wasn't necessarily the overwhelming goal scorer, the record breaker, nothing like that. He was, however, the soul of the team.
And I think this is whenever you look at Maradona in anything, like I've watched in documentaries, if you've not watched Maradona in Mexico, you should definitely watch it. It's his management career. It's the effect that he has on other people. It's the effect that his personality, the fact that he is there, transforms everyone else. There was a story of, just jumping quickly to his Argentina career, when he played against Cameroon in Italia 90, the first group game. Apparently the Cameroonian players were crying in the tunnel before the game because they couldn't believe they were going to be on the same pitch as Maradona. His personality was so huge, his aura was so huge that it's the effect that he has on people. And this is why we are talking about him now, right?
Yeah, and there are crazy stories then. I mean, I'm sure they're going to make another documentary about only Maradona in Naples, but the situation was so crazy that an earthquake was registered in Napoli during a UEFA Cup game. There were so many people at the stadium, all jumping, all chanting. The excitement around Maradona made the earthquake center, the Naples earthquake. So, Naples is a city that has a volcano chilling right there. So they're constantly monitoring the waves, And that night they recorded what looked like the possible beginning of an earthquake. And another thing that was very famous in Naples, apparently kids would go to the barber and ask for the Maradona haircut. If you look at Maradona, he's just a curly dude. And so I'm guessing that kids would ask to get a perm to just look like Maradona. And another very cool thing is that Maradona was a very short dude. And so I'm picturing these guys actually getting the same hair as him and possibly looking just like him. If they put the Napoli kit on, they could just look like him.
Well, there was a scene in the documentary, I think, when they just won the Scudetto, and there was a dad with his kid on his shoulders, and the kid had like a black wig on, like Maradona, like about the same height as him, and you're like, oh wait, was that it? Oh no, wait, that wasn't him. That wasn't him.
But so he ended up becoming a symbol to Napoli, and I think this is the moment where we can weigh in, even though this is not the moment to do it. But when we talk about Maradona, we have to also talk about the huge controversy that surrounded him as a person. So drug abuse, not recognizing one of his children until way later, violence against women, sleeping with underage women. That was also a thing that recently came out. We're going to dwell into that a bit more, but that's why I also think that it's extremely fitting that Napoli and Maradona were a thing, because Napoli, there is a saying in Italy, Vedi Napoli e poi muori. It means you visit Naples and then you can die because you've done it all in your life. You've seen the most beautiful city in the world, according to some. But Napoli is also very known for the Camorra, which is the local mafia system, for a lot of gun violence, drug trading, drug trafficking, a very poor city that at times feels like doesn't really want to get rid of its poor city status. It's something that it actually draws pride from. Well, when you think that Maradona became the symbol to the city, you wonder why. He was an incredible player, a poet when he was playing football, but at the same time, a person surrounded by controversy.
Exactly. I feel like as much as we said him and the city were perfectly tied together, they were also the worst nightmare for each other, because all the temptations that were there for him, and he had all the connections. He had the Camorra kind of getting him to parties and giving him the stuff, getting him hooked, whatever it is. And also, obviously, some of the things he's done, you cannot apologise for and you cannot let go. But I feel like the drug abuse and the inconsistency in relationships, I think there's a lot of people that if they'd been in his position would have been doing exactly the same. And that doesn't excuse it, but I feel like some people who judge him for it maybe you should think about, if you're being followed around by 90,000 people every time you leave the house, and you've got a camera in your face every time, you can't be on your own, people are singing your name every time, like shit's going to get heavy, things are going to go south, you've got women throwing themselves at you every day. Like, I think part of it is kind of understandable to a degree, and I think being in Naples only made those temptations worse for him. And then eventually when he did want to leave, that president, by the way, is an arsehole, because he turned around to the president and said, I want to leave, I need to get out of Naples. As his addiction was getting worse and he could see his life was spiraling out of control, he said, I need to get out of Naples. He said, I'm not selling you. And his results, his condition only got worse from there. Like he wanted to get out of it, but they wouldn't sell him. And I feel like that president has a lot to answer for as well. But,
yeah, and I mean, one thing that, I think that all the rest, it can be, he can be judged. I mean, how can you not judge someone for sleeping with underage women? But one thing that I can totally understand why that happened is the ties with the Camorra in Naples. That's impossible not to eventually cross paths with the Camorra. The Camorra, I don't know if you guys know how the mafia works in Italy, basically, but Maradona he's a walking target for the Camorra just because he risks becoming more than the Camorra, like bigger than the Camorra. The Camorra has to step in at that moment. You can be Maradona, but you can be Maradona under the Camorra. Don't try to defy the Camorra. And Maradona, at the end, they were just like, he might have thought like, no, I don't want to do that. But then, they put down a few lines in front of him and they're like, dude, we just brought the best Colombian stuff just for you. Are you sure you want to say no? And then, it's a vicious circle. And when you realize that you got to get out quick. And that's where that Napoli president really failed.
Exactly. And also by that point, it's too late. By the time you realize you've got to get out, it's too late usually. So I feel like he was really, really trapped there. And his attitude or his relationship with Italy really changed very quickly. Now, we're going to jump forward a little bit to Italia 90, but that also coincides with the ending of his Napoli career. So it's a World Cup semi-final and Argentina are going to play Italy. Of course, it's in Naples. So Maradona makes a press conference, or he's interviewed, and he says to the Neapolitans, the Italians have never considered you, Italy. They've never wanted you. They've always given you abuse. If you want to see me happy, you should support Argentina. Now, I love this, because if I'd have been Neapolitan,